is going up. And almost the only reason they're talking about it is to dismiss it and to laugh at it and say, hey, look at all these fools buying gold. Right? They're just chasing this market, right? It's just going up for no reason.
All of these things continue to come together. And maybe what's even the most interesting about all of it is that gold's at all-time highs, but how many people even know it? And that's where we are. The retail hasn't taken part in this at all.
When the momentum is established by gold, and that momentum attracts generalist investors to the precious metals market, when those people come down into the precious metals market, market leadership changes from gold to silver.
The big story of the week continues to be the relentless rise of the price of gold, hitting new record high after another. We just finished this holiday shortened week. And, tomorrow is Good Friday. And so this Sunday is Easter. I got my Sundays mixed up on the last podcast. But gold managed to rise 2.7% this 4-day week. Gold yesterday hit a new record high above 3,360. We closed the week, I think, at 3,330. That is a huge move. In fact, yesterday, gold had its biggest one-day price increase, dollar-wise, in history. At one point, I think it was up $114. I think it closed up about $109. Now, I've been in the investment business for over 30 years. I've never seen the price of gold rise by $100 in one day. I've now seen it 3 times. Although it didn't always close that high, but 3 times since Liberation Day. So we really liberated gold on Liberation Day. But this is a big deal to see gold moving up like this. And, I was forecasting years ago that one day we would see gold moving in much bigger increments. Now, I know as the price of gold gets higher and higher, when you're talking about $3,000 gold, $100 is not what it used to be. When gold was 300, 400, 500, right? If it moved 100, it would be much bigger. But, I think we're going to see days where gold's up 200, 300. I mean, those days are coming. But, what's more significant even, than the increase in the price of gold is the fact that nobody cares. Nobody pays attention. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. When you don't know there's a bubble, you don't see the pin. And that, is something that I came up with that line during the housing crisis. Because a lot of people, even after 2007, after the subprime market really started to collapse, most people just shrugged it off. They didn't care. They thought it was nothing. They thought it was contained. I knew it wasn't. Because I knew we were in a bubble, and I knew that subprime pricked it. But because the mainstream had no idea that we had been living all those years in a bubble, they didn't notice the pin. I did. Well, gold is the pin, and Trump is the one that inserted it into the bubble. Now, gold was already rising before Liberation Day, but Trump really stuck it in there, and the bubble is deflating. But if you don't know that there's a bubble to deflate, well, you don't realize that it's been pricked. And so you kind of make excuses for the pin, which is what CNBC is doing again. I mean, they did it before, when I was coming on their air back in 2006 and 7 and 8 even, warning about the housing market and the financial crisis that would ensue when it popped. And they just labeled me Dr. Doom, and they had a lot of fun laughing at me and making fun of me until all my predictions came true. And then they kind of stopped inviting me on, although they still invited me on a little bit, just not as much. And then they eventually, once the Bitcoin advertisers, showed up, they basically banned me completely. Maybe those things are just a coincidence. I don't know. But it's interesting that the talking heads on CNBC are oblivious to gold and the bubble that's been pricked. they're as oblivious to this one as they were to the housing bubble. But anyway, so I'm watching. I get up early in the morning, and I'm not sleeping that well. So much stuff is happening at night. I get up and I check the markets, and then it piques my interest. I try to go back to
be prepared for a 50% down move in bull markets. Precious metals are notoriously volatile, and silver is more volatile than the rest. I'm reminded of the decade of the 1970s, where in the beginning of the decade, gold was up from $35 an ounce to $200 an ounce. In early 1975, the Fed, concerned about inflation, raised the interest rate, which cratered the gold price. It fell from $200 an ounce to $100 an ounce in 9 short months. Of course, the Fed lost its nerve because it cratered the bond market and the stock market too. When the Fed reversed course, the gold price ran from $100 an ounce to $850 an ounce. What's important to remember is that if the underlying conditions favoring a bull market stay intact, the bull market will stay intact too, but it will certainly test your patience, your faith, and your bank account in the interim. And I think probably we're due in the near term for a rest in terms of the gold price. It's also worthy to note that silver has not, as of yet, kept up with gold's pace. As long as you say a digital monetary system, not the monetary system, governments will never back their currencies with gold. They will not do it. It imposes a discipline on them. It reduces their power. And people go into politics for power. The beautiful thing about the age that we're living in, Dunnigan, is that with this proliferation of currencies, there doesn't need only to be official sector currencies. A currency can be whatever you and I decide it can be. It can be physical gold or, coming soon to a wallet near you, a gold token. We will see this in the near term. It is highly unlikely that this currency will enjoy any official backing whatsoever, and that doesn't particularly matter to me. I'm a consumer of currencies, and I love the fact that a whole bunch of people are out there trying to invent new ones which will serve me better. A physical gold token, backed by reputable organizations, 100% secured by gold and redeemable for gold, I think would be a superb currency. And I believe that it's technologically feasible now, and I think it will occur 2 or 3 years from now.
Really all of this stuff started changing when I started coming on your show. We started by talking about gold's reclassification as a tier 1. We talked about the central banks going on a buying spree. We talked about the central banks going on a repatriation spree. We've seen the rise of the classification called the others on the COMEX that had started draining the COMEX in 2020. I started saying to you on your show, this has never happened before. What the heck's going on? We've seen this trend continue. We see the central banks continuing to buy gold and silver. We see, and those numbers increasing. We see the repatriation by central banks continuing. We see the United States become a net importer of gold and silver, in particular gold, since November. We see massive deliveries into the COMEX since November. We see a LBMA breaking down. We see an LBMA that was T+1, now T+8 weeks. So from 1 day plus the trade day, 3-day settlement, you're now at 8 weeks. That seems like a default. We see JP Morgan, who always I lamented, how could they be allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust after paying the largest fine the Justice Department ever handed out for manipulating the market? Well, they've now become primary custodian along with BlackRock, not only of SLD, but also GLD. In 2 vaults, they hold more gold than 80% of the G20 countries. All of these things together are substantial. You put them together, something much bigger is happening. You look at Judy Shelton talk about 50-year treasuries that she is convinced will be announced on July 4th, 2026, the 250th year anniversary of this country. She says Trump has told her that. They've had discussions on it. You see talks from the head of the Dutch National Bank and the Bundesbank and Senator Loomis from Wyoming talking about revaluing gold. All of these things continue to come together. And maybe what's even the most interesting about all of it is that gold's at all-time highs, but how many people even know it? Yeah, the people watching this show know it, but no one knows it. I mean, it's so underplayed by the media. It's absolutely crazy. And if you would have told me we'd be at 3,300 gold and no one would notice it, I would be completely dumbfounded. And that's where we are. The retail hasn't taken part in this at all.